It's time now for Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join News Director Paul David and News Editor Philip Katafamo as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics in Yavapai County that affect all our lives. And now here's today's Countywide.
Welcome to Countywide. I'm Paul David. As always, it is great to have you in studio with us, whether you're watching or listening today. Coconino National Forest NEPA Coordinator Mike Decter is joining us in studio today to talk about the Fossil Creek Management Plan, the Fossil River Management Plan, which is been in the works for quite some time. We're talking to Mike about more about that. He's going to take us on kind of a trip down memory lane about Fossil Creek, and then we'll get more into what stage we're at right now with the management plan and what is next in terms of that management plan. Hello, Mike. Thanks for joining us today. Can you give us
Thanks for having me.
Can you give us a little bit of a history lesson on Fossil Creek? You and I were talking before the show, and this has been going on a lot longer than I thought it was even going on. So give us kind of the background.
Yeah. So Fossil Creek actually holds an amazing story in our history in Arizona. You know, it's a creek in the middle of Arizona, and it's been kind of taken away from creek status for about 100 years when it was a dam was built. All that water was put in a flume and led to the Irving Power Plant, which made power for the mines for copper smelting in Jerome. And so in 2005, they decommissioned the power plant and they put all that water, they took the dam down and put all that water back in the river. And so we got a new river in Arizona in 2005. And since that time, we've been trying to figure out the management of it. It's brought on huge amount of recreation. It's actually an amazing river in and of itself, as it's a 100% spring-fed river, and it has this material in it called travertine that makes the water kind of aquamarine blue, and it makes these awesome kind of travertine rock formations in the river as well. So it's really special in its own right. There's only a few travertine rivers like this in the world.
So 15 years we've been working on Fossil Creek is what it is. 15 years, that's a mighty long time.
Yeah, so in 2005 was the decommissioning when water returned back to the stream. In 2009, though, is when Congress actually designated Fossil Creek and recognized it as such a special place. They designated it a wild and scenic river, which adds additional protections under the Wild and Scenic River Act. And it tells the Forest Service that we have to write a management plan on how to management over the long term to protect, the values that make it a wild and scenic river.
Now, tell me a little bit about some of the challenges that when the public started going down in there and it was decommissioned and the creek was flowing again, Fossil Creek was back to normal. We did some shows back then when that first started happening, and it was said that we were loving the place to death. There were so many people down there, and the trees were getting cut down, bushes were getting cut down. There was camping along the creeks, human waste and just waste in general being left behind. So we were causing quite a bit of damage down along Fossil Creek, and then the traffic flow was also another issue. Emergency personnel were not able to get down in there to. We have. What's the word? We have some folks that'll become very dehydrated on hiking into that location. It's a remote location.
Yeah, I mean, it's very remote. From the Camp Verde side, you're talking a 13-mile unimproved road. And from the Strawberry side, you can only hike in through the Fossil Springs, what's now called the Bob Bear Trail. And so access is very limited. It makes it very difficult to manage large groups of people because it can affect things like emergency access. As you mentioned, it's been quite a journey since 2005 when the dam was decommissioned and the water flows returned. Recreation shot up like we've never seen before. A new river was birthed, and it's gorgeous, kind of like an oasis in the desert, and people flock to it like we've never seen before. And so to manage that over time, we've worked with a bunch of partners such as NAU, who did a bunch of studies on what type of impacts we were seeing, and other organizations such as Fish and Wildlife Service and Game and Fish to help us manage the wildlife and reintroduce fish in the river. And then for recreation uses, we started clamping down a little and issued a permit system. And that permit system was actually officially being adopted in this current decision that we're proposing at this time, because it's been so effective at managing recreation use, still providing access and still making sure that, Fossil Creek remains special because of all these values that are identified as a wild and scenic river.
I was going to ask you about that, if the Fossil Creek reservation system was working out pretty good. It seems like it has been, because it's been in place now for several years. So people seem pretty responsive to that and doing okay. And there's been some improvements made down there already in the Fossil Creek area to alleviate some of the parking and congestion in there as well, right?
Yeah, so, between 2005 and current, when recreation shot up, and at first we saw tons of impacts, so we started kind of implementing more controls. The main thing was that reservation system, although there was a bunch of other actions as well, such as adding in facilities. We put up a bunch of signs at the entrance where we had a bunch of rescues, as you identified before, and also with the help and leadership of the Pine Strawberry Fire Department, which has really helped, discourage poor decisions and hiking down that trail and people becoming dehydrated. And so that's been key. And that's really helped us understand what works and what doesn't. And a lot of the things that work are adopted through this proposed decision in the Fossil Creek Management Plan. And also the decision actually approves development of a lot of these campgrounds to allow for more sustainable recreation and possibly even to increase the amount of recreation over time if we have monitoring that shows that, the use is not impacting water quality or the trails and the soils or wildlife and other resources in that corridor.
Okay, so that's kind of our brief background on Fossil Creek, right? I mean, that's the last 15 years. That doesn't count all of the meetings and public meetings that you've had in this period of time as well, getting public feedback. And you talked about talking with Tonto National Forest and the fire departments and things like that are all impacted by Fossil Creek. So where are we at right now? Because in early December, I got a story here that's dated from us December 4th. It says, after years of substantial public input and collaboration, the Coconino and Tonto National Forests are prepared to release a comprehensive plan on how Fossil Creek should be managed and protected. I feel like that's where we're at today, right? And at least a little more time before we move on to the next step. Is that right?
Yeah, so this is a major milestone. Yeah, this is a major milestone right now in the Fossil Creek process where we release the final plan of how we wanted to manage it over the next 10 to 20 years. And then we also released a bunch of site-specific improvements, which campgrounds are going to be improved and how they might be improved and what areas might be affected. And so that information is in the draft record of decision, which is on our website. There's also a full environmental impact statement and, of course, the comprehensive river management plan itself. So it's, these three documents have all this information of what we plan to do and how we manage to plan to manage this corridor over the past 11 years of public input and reviewing and analysis and looking at comments on our previous proposals. And we expect to finish the objection process, which is the period we're in right now. If people don't like our draft decision, they could send in an objection. And we plan to get through that around May. And if all goes well with the objection process, we can sign a final decision at that time. And that lets us start implementing the plans. The comprehensive river management plan.
Oh, okay. Let's take our first break, okay? Let's take our first break of the morning here for the show. Coconino National Forest NEPA coordinator Mike Decter is in studio with us today. CoconinoNationalForest.us is the website. You can go there. Right on the front page towards the bottom is the information about Fossil Creek. Stick around. Countywide will be back in just a couple minutes.
Who doesn't dream of home improvements? Perhaps your kitchen, the real living room. Maybe the bathroom, where you bookend your day. Langstrand Contracting is your one-stop shop from tear down to finishing touches. With 35 years of experience, Chris and his team will work with you to match your family's style and budget. Call Langstrand Contracting today for guidance in bringing your vision to life.
Hi, this is Greg at Verde Solar Power. Arizona has lots of clean, renewable sunshine, and we want to help you take advantage of it with our quality solar installations, and we offer to beat any written offer on a residential solar electric system. So bring us your electric bill and let us show you how solar power will save you money. We're located conveniently here in the Verde Valley and are dedicated to helping the valley go solar. So remember, the energy solution comes up every morning.
Starting in the late 1920s, Grandpa Gettle and his brothers laid the groundwork for what would become a family legacy. Almost 100 years and 100 patents later, Gettle's High Desert Mechanical continues to raise the bar of quality heating, cooling, and plumbing products and services in the Verde Valley.
Call Gettle's High Desert Mechanical Heating, Air Conditioning, and Plumbing at 567-2200 or online at GettlesHDM.com, providing solutions for your comfort. Don't settle. Get Gettles.
Terrifying job. Snake handler, take one.
James, this is a really terrifying job. Given the hazards, why do you do it?
I've been fascinated by reptiles since I was a child.
Tell me about your little friend there.
So this is Bear Hug. He's a Burmese python. We have him here at the Phoenix Zoo.
It kind of makes my skin crawl. Is there anything that rattles you?
Yeah, distracted drivers terrify me.
Welcome back to Countywide. I'm Paul David. Mike Dexter from Coconino National Forest is in studio with us today, NEPA coordinator. We're talking about Fossil Creek and the river management plan that's being put together down there and is available. Mike, let me ask you this. Now, this is the rough draft that you're showing the public right now and saying, okay, this is what we came up with after years of talking to the public and our constituents and stakeholders. This is what we've come up with as what we think is going to be a good plan. Is there a plan A, B, C, and D, or just this? We're at the point where it's this plan. Do you like it or not? And what parts do you like and don't like?
So we have a final analysis out right now and a draft decision. And then in the Forest Service, we have what's called an objection process, where anyone who doesn't like this draft decision could submit an objection to it. And then it goes up to the higher level, which is the regional forester, and they will review that. And that basically is an impartial party to make sure that we're not messing up the rules or not listening to concerns that were brought up that are legitimate that we just totally ignored or something. And so right now, if folks are interested, they can go to our website and get the final environmental impact statement. And that looks at all the different alternatives that were considered for management. So for example, we had alternatives that opened the main road, Forest Road 708, and allowed repairs, and alternatives that did not. The current draft decision does allow for repairs to the 708 road. If there's resources available. We also had alternatives that allowed much more public use and some alternatives that include much less public use than what we have currently. And so we looked at, I think, 6 different alternatives. The alternative that is identified in the draft decision is a modified version of alternative E, which basically keeps current levels the same, but allows them to increase over time given monitoring shows outstandingly remarkable values aren't being impacted. And if we build additional infrastructure that allows for additional use, such as parking areas.
Okay, all right. So you want to take us for a little visual picture down Fossil Creek and tell us what kind of some of the proposals are, some of the bigger things that we'll be seeing, hopefully, in the future?
Sure. So there's 2 types of elements of the draft decision. One is the CRMP itself. This is long-term management plan about what type of activities are approved in that corridor and what aren't. The other types of decisions are site-specific decisions. And so that's more about what type of improvements may we see at each campsite. There are about 10 different camping or developed areas within the Fossil Creek corridor, which is about 17 miles long. And these include trailheads such as the Bob Bear or Fossil Springs trailhead, the Waterfall trailhead. So these areas are really popular for accessing the most, used trails in the Fossil Creek corridor. And the decision authorizes some parking areas in those areas, and then a whole suite of recreation benefits such as toilets, picnic tables, shade structures, etc. So the draft decision includes those and is very specific on each site as to what is authorized. And then it also includes the authorization to improve the 708 road. There's currently 4.1 miles of that road from the Strawberry side down to the bottom of the creek, which has been washed out. It's been washed out for years. And so this decision would authorize the improvements and additional scaling studies for that road to allow it to be rebuilt if there are funds available. And that would, really also need to be based on adaptive management, which is kind of the beating heart of this decision. The ability to kind of see change as things change in the quarter. Either it's natural change, we saw that picture earlier of how a flood can change the conditions in the creek so much, or if it's changed in patterns of use by the public and maybe how that use affects the land. And so we're going to be monitoring that. The decision requires this monitoring, and it requires that we look at that before making any changes to the corridor, whether it's reopening the 708 road or authorizing those changes, or it's adding infrastructure to a specific rec site.
Wow, that is a lot. Forest Road 708, I can see why people must park at the end of where the road ends right there at the moment. I can see where you want to make the improvements or actually reconstruct the road that has been washed out down to, it looks like the Waterfall Lewis TH area. People walking that chunk of road that's out right now? And that's probably why they're running into trouble with heat exhaustion and dehydration and stuff right there.
Well, the most issues I think with the dehydration is people hiking the Bob Bear or Fossil Springs Trail down to the Fossil Springs area. Okay. You know, it's a deceivingly easy trail in the beginning, but it's an 8-mile round trip, and a lot of it's exposed direct sunlight, and so people start out thinking, no, this isn't going to be so bad, but we've had a lot of problems there, and now there's huge signs, when you enter the Strawberry side that say, don't be a statistic, more than 200 people each year have to be rescued because, it can be a big problem. But that's mostly the Bob Bear Trail. People do still try to walk the old road down, but it's only currently accessible for administrative use for vehicles.
Okay, I know Pine and Strawberry, the agency there in the Tonto National Forest, we're kind of begging people to not go down there. If you're not an avid hiker and avid outdoors person, they were overwhelmed by the amount of people that they had to go down and rescue every single weekend that were down in Fossil Creek. I know they asked because they were unable to respond to their own emergencies happening in their own community because they were spending so much time down in Fossil Creek.
Yeah.
So we have until now.
Yeah,
can anybody?
That
I'm sorry. We've got a delay, folks. There's a delay. We're doing things virtually, and it's just the nature of the beast. Do we have January 19th is the deadline you told me prior to the show for people to comment on this? Can everybody comment on this, or only people who've been participating up until now? Because I was confused about that with the press release a little bit.
Well, that's a great question. There's actually two different objection processes. We have one specifically for the management language in the CRMP, and that's 60 days and goes out to the beginning of February. And then we have this 45-day one if you want to object to authorization of the road repair or any of the specific changes we're making. And that's the 45-day one. And so anyone who previously submitted comments during any of the previous public comment periods are eligible to file an objection. So you or I can send an objection, and if we didn't previously comment, it will just be dismissed. But if we had, then it will go through the whole review process.
Okay. And then you guys will take those and look them over again and decide what needs to be done. Now, how long will that... Well, you just mentioned before the first break there that you guys are kind of hoping to have this locked down by May?
Yeah, and so the objection process is 45 to 60 days, so about 60 days total. That's the filing period. And then there's about another 90 days for the regional forester, who's kind of the next step up of the person making the decision, who's the forest supervisors on the Tonto and Coconino. That person the regional forester reviews the objections and says, yeah, they followed the rules, or, they really missed some important issues that were brought up by the public. Those need to be addressed. So it kind of keeps us honest.
Okay. All right. Let's take our second break. Coconino National Forest NEPA coordinator Mike Decter is in studio with us today. CoconinoNationalForest.us is the website to go to find out more about the Fossil Creek Management Plan. Stick around. Countywide back in just a couple minutes.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
The EPA says C&B Construction ranks in the top 1% nationally. C&B Construction invites you to see what energy efficiency and indoor air quality can be. We have won another Department of Energy Innovation Award, and C&B Construction is the only contractor in the country to win 6 consecutive EPA Indoor Air Plus awards. Experience our zero-energy, move-in ready homes at Crossroads at Mingus.
C&B Construction, locally respected, nationally recognized. Find out more at C&B homes.com.
Been hearing about the crazy benefits of CBD? Find out how CBD can help you at Sedona's #1 resource, CBD Sedona. Come in for a free consultation and let our trained medical staff help you find the perfect product for you. Pain-relieving salves, full-spectrum oils, CBD skincare, bath bombs, and even CBD for your pets. Come on by CBD Sedona today.
Terrifying jobs, high-flying linemen, take 3.
Josh, this is an absolutely terrifying job. Why do you do it?
It's a very demanding job, but very rewarding and exciting.
How much energy are you actually working with up there?
500,000 volts of electricity.
It's definitely not my line of work. Does anything shock you?
Yeah, distracted drivers terrify me.
Welcome back to Countywide. Just a few minutes left in the program. Coconino National Forest NEPA Coordinator Mike Decter is in studio with us today talking about the Fossil Creek River Management Plan. January 19th is the deadline to talk about part of it, and then early February for the rest of it. But if you go to the website, coconinonationalforest.us, and you click on the Fossil Creek information, it should take you right to where you need to go. It's right on their home page. And we were talking during the break that maybe we should mention where Fossil Creek is, just outside of Camp Verde, as you head out on Highway 260 towards Highway 87. I think everyone's kind of familiar with that pull-off just outside of Camp Verde on the right-hand side of the road is Fossil Creek. And then, of course, when you hit the Strawberry area on the other side over on Highway 87, you can come in that direction into Fossil Creek, just so folks get kind of a geographical idea as to where that's sitting at. What else do we need to make sure we... Oh, I know. Before I let you go, Mike, and I don't know if you can answer this question for me, but we had a story come up a couple weeks back about feral cattle down in Fossil Creek. And it was the first time I'd heard anything about feral cattle down in Fossil Creek. But they were supposedly stampeding maybe some kayakers in the water and causing some issues. So the Forest Service went in there and removed some cattle from down there. Can you clue me in on that one?
Yeah, so there have been feral cattle in the Fossil Creek area, I think, for several years, and also in the connecting Verde River corridor. And we actually received a notice of intent of a lawsuit that basically, because we were neglecting those cattle being in the river corridors where they have impacts to forage and vegetation and riparian vegetation. And so recently the Forest Service hired an organization, I don't know exactly who it was, to go in there and round up all the feral cattle that have been in there for quite some time. And recently I just read an article that they were successful and had finished doing all of the roundup actions. So I think that's a really good thing.
Too.
For
I had seen that too.
And the cattle.
They'd gone in there and they round up the cattle and got them out of there. But that was the first time I'd heard anything about feral cattle down in Fossil Creek. So that was kind of interesting. I've just never heard of anything like that.
Well, but it does speak to the fact, that this is a multiple use landscape. So we have cattle grazing going on in the landscape. We have recreational uses. We have a lot of biological uses. I mean, one of the cool things about Fossil Creek, I think it's the only all-native fishery in Arizona. And a lot of that's due to a lot of the reintroductions of rare and endangered fish species by the Arizona Game and Fish and Wildlife Service. So it's used in many ways. And a lot of it, kind of the trick is finding how we can make these uses balance, how we can find harmony between them. And so that's really what this plan is all about.
That is the challenge, the 15-year challenge so far. We're out of time.
Yeah.
But you said before the show that you'll come back when the final is done and it's ready to go, and construction maybe is getting ready to start on some things, which could be late spring, early summer, somewhere in there, and or not. It depends on what happens. But it would be good to have you come back and fill us in on how things turn out on this for sure. So I appreciate you coming in and being my first show of 2021 on Countywide. I appreciate it very much.
Well, I love that we were able to share your first show, and thanks for having me, and would love to come back in May, hopefully, or maybe a little later and talk about Fossil Creek.
All right, Coconino National Forest NEPA Coordinator Mike Decter, CoconinoNationalForest.us. That's today's Countywide. As always, we thank you for watching, listening, and we'll talk to you again next time.